Perhaps worth pointing out is that a lot of this is undecided, and we can make reasonable, educated guesses on how things are going. There's also a degree to which things are up in the air. How do you see us rebuilding in the new world after the financial reset, and what role do you believe silver will play in this new world? Well, assuming that there is a financial reset, perhaps we're seeing some of that play out now already, whether that means that there's actually a reset of gold and silver prices or just a change in the way that the current monetary system is orchestrated. I think the biggest thing that's going to have to change is that at some point, there's going to have to be some resolution to all of the debt and derivatives that are out there. It's not just in the US. We've seen debt loads around the globe that mathematically can't be repaid. A lot of it's being attempted to be repaid just by debasing the currency, and that's causing a lot of issues now as they try to address the inflation that many of us have expected for a long time and finally arrived. But perhaps rebuilding for something a little more solid going forward. Could that be similar to what we saw in the Great Depression back in the 1930s? There's certainly the possibility for that, but in terms of rebuilding on something more stable and living within our means mindset, I think that's a reasonable estimate of how this will play out. How will silver play out in this new world? That's an interesting one because there's certainly a lot of people who wonder if we'll get to a barter environment with silver, and I think there's a degree to which that can occur, although perhaps more so just the idea of needing gold and silver, not necessarily as a day-to-day money where we're going to the store and buying our groceries with an ounce of silver, but using them as some store of value. So whether that means that we have a gold and silver backed crypto like Kinesis or some of the other ones that are out there that allow us to use that, but more so in the sense of money as a store of value in terms of something backing these currencies, because I think that's been the big problem, is that you have these currencies that can be printed at will with nothing behind them. And I think silver is one of the things that will be one of the things backing that. Is there going to be a happy ending? Well, if we go to a system of something more real and removes the ability just to bail out banks every time this system goes bad and print more money, I think in the long term, that would be a really good thing for society. You'd have a more equitable system, not having the never-ending inflation that has been ongoing ever since the Fed was created in 1913, has certainly accelerated over these past couple of years and has made life hard for a lot of people. I remember a couple of weeks ago reading something about how back in the 60s and the 70s, you could have one person in the family working, earning a salary, you could afford to buy a house, and didn't need to be working around the clock, but because of the inflation, now things are a lot harder. People working multiple jobs, in most cases both parents in the workforce, and a situation that I think is in net much different than the dream that we were told about here in the US, and I think you have a similar dynamic that's taken place in many other countries around the world. So if you go back to something that prevents that from happening, whether that's a full gold backing, a partial gold backing, or even if someone wanted to subscribe to the idea that Bitcoin, at least with a finite supply, was going to back something, anything that removes the ability to just print money at will that often goes to the banks and the elite class first, I think that would lead to a better situation for the people of the globe and would be a happy ending. With that said, you mentioned, will there be the digital bank government currencies? Sure seems like that's already happening to a degree now. I have a friend who was recently in England where he said they've already begun rolling out a lot of these features. And just recently we heard that the Fed is starting a 12-week test pilot program. So I certainly think they're going to roll these things out. how much they're able to force people to have to use them? Do we get to the point where to go to the supermarket you need a digital ID or a microchip to buy your groceries? I sure hope not, but that's another one of those things that I don't believe has been decided yet, and how much pushback there is will probably have a big factor in how that plays out. Do people readily accept that and opt in voluntarily? Is there a lot of pushback? I think those are going to play a big role in seeing how that plays out. And I do think there is a good percentage of people who are against these policies, perhaps still a minority when we look at how things played out recently with the whole situation, but I think there's a growing number of people, I'll let you decide for yourself what percentage that might be, that are concerned about these things, don't want the further government control, and perhaps that will decide which of these paths we ultimately head down. So in the end, is there a happy ending? I think that comes down to how we respond as people. I don't think a lot of this is decided, and I do think there is a degree to which when the honest people who just want to live in an honest system band together and support what they believe, that it can have a bigger impact than we've been led to believe. And I like to think that will be the case going forward. So Craig, I appreciate that you're doing this project and getting different views on these things, because I think that will be instrumental in the time period going forward.